Doctors could be on the brink of a breakthrough.
Migraines.
How to control them.
Tame a migraine.
A severe migraine.
Throbbing, recurring headaches.
Given all the noise, navigating the migraine experience can be confusing and scary, but you do not have to do it alone. Welcome to the Migraine Guy Podcast, the official podcast of themigraineguy.com and theheadachereview.com. Now, here's your host.
What is up, my migraine podians? How you doing out there? I am Kevin here, the Migraine Guy, bringing you another episode of the Migraine Guy Podcast. We do lots of stuff on the podcast, so if this is your first time listening, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and you will get all the associated notifications on your device when I upload new podcasts. Also, if you are listening on iTunes, I really would appreciate a 5-star review with some kind comments. Positive reviews and comments help other people find the pod. So that being said, I wanted to dig deep into the archives this week and go back to a podcast I did at the very beginning of the podcast in terms of when I started it last year. And we're going to be talking about some things to be aware of from quote-unquote natural cures, or people who claim to have natural remedies for your migraine. There certainly are some, researched supplements, some good programs that you can implement both dietarily and with certain devices that don't involve medications on your body to help reduce your overall migraine pain. Pick your favorite ice device or migraine relief glasses company for examples. But there are lots and lots of scams out there as migraine drugs become much more popular to do news coverage about. For example, the CGRP meds that are coming out. Lots of big, bold headlines about migraine prevention out there recently. The more scams that are going to come out, more people trying to profit off of awareness about a disease because they think that they have a particular dietary program or maybe supplement brand or a combination of those plus some other things, all for the low price of $30 if you want to buy their ebook to find the cure, when really there's very little evidence to support their claims, and their claims themselves are sometimes worded in ways to really confuse and make it sound like the people promoting these quote-unquote cures are well researched and respected in their field, when in reality many of these kind of certification programs they go through can be done online for a few $100s with just 12 hours of quote-unquote studying. So I wanted to remind all of you about some of the ways in which we can sniff out scams, which are a huge part of the problem in the migraine community. Lots of scams out there and people not realizing that they're being scammed. So wanted to bring this to your attention. We got some cool stuff coming up in the pod over the next few weeks. We're going to be having some interviews. We're going to be doing some Back to Basics podcast. We're going to go back to some simple tools that we can use to help with our migraines that, if you're like me, sometimes you need a reminder every few months to do those things because you might be real diligent for a couple months and then forget about doing it. So that is the intro here. We're going to get to those tips, and that's all I got to say. Hope you hit subscribe. Bye. First thing you really need to be aware of is that there are tons of buzzwords in the natural, homeopathic, etc. styled community when it comes to headache and migraine treatments. A couple of those buzzwords that you're going to come across all the time, just do a quick Google search for the words natural and the words toxic with migraine treatment, and you will come up with a number, hundreds of thousands of different pages and websites that tell you about their particular method to be natural and avoid toxic, I don't even know what the right follow-up word is, toxic properties, toxic chemicals, toxic things in the environment. These words get tossed around quite a bit in these so-called natural migraine treatments, and you need to be aware of them, not because they're wrong to use, not because these people are wrong to use those terms, but because they're poorly defined, poorly understood, and even if the person telling you about their natural migraine remedy has a clear and defined notion of natural, many people don't, and so it can be kind of one of these buzzwords, gets your emotions going, but doesn't have a lot of content behind it. What does the author mean? What does the person touting their migraine cure mean when they tell you it's natural and they're telling you that it's going to help you get rid of toxins in your body? What is a toxin? There's a clear and defined medical notion of toxin. There's a pretty clear and defined notion of natural to some degree, but it's not the best word to use, but lots of people use it, and you need to be aware. Because if when someone's telling you they have a natural method to help you with your migraines, or they have a way to get rid of toxins in your body, they probably, if you ask them, and I would encourage you to do so before you spend any money on their products, ask them what they mean by toxic. Ask them why what they're calling toxic is toxic, and see if they can give you more of a detailed answer. Chances are most of these people are not going to be able to give you any sort of biochemical explanation about why thing X is toxic or why thing Y is natural. And that is a big red flag so far as I'm concerned, because you really need to have people who use words and know what the words mean. And if they don't, then they're just selling you some snake oil, some malarkey, something that does not need to be taken seriously if they don't understand what they're saying. So that's my first thing. Watch out for the buzzwords. Second thing we're going to be talking about, let me check my sheet here. Watch out for titles that are not regulated by peer-reviewed organizations. What I mean by titles is when you search a lot of these people, after you come across maybe their website or their migraine or headache treatment, they're going to have a lot of abbreviations after their name to show that they have qualifications in that area. For example, MD is very well known, right? Medical doctor. And so if you go to someone who isn't an MD, you know they're not a medical doctor. Maybe they're a nurse practitioner. Maybe there's some other kind of medical specialist. A couple of these very popular titles are FDN, which is a functional diagnostic, nutritionist? A functional diagnostic nutrition is what the program is, and they tend to call themselves functional diagnostic nutritionists. And this is an FDN the letters would be FDN following the name of the person. What are some reasons to be worried about that? Well, I don't know exactly what the content of the certification process is, but when you go to the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition website, which seems to be the main way that people get certified, they have a 10-lesson course that after you pass, you can be labeled an FDN. Now, I don't know about you, but typically when I want someone giving me medical or health advice, I would like them to have a little more than 10 online courses. That's not to say that the FDN certification is bunk or garbage, but if that's the only thing they have to substantiate their claim that their protocol for your migraine or headache treatment is going to work, that's a pretty small amount of qualifications to have when it comes to telling you what you should eat and what sort of medical advice you should be seeking. Additionally, you might see something called a CHC. I'm going to put links to everything I'm talking about, by the way, below. So make sure to check out that if you want more information about what I'm saying. The CHC is a legal certification that helps people navigate the legal ramifications of some of the medical claims that they make, which is great, right? You don't want to say something silly. You don't want to get sued. You don't want that kind of garbage. But some people who tout migraine treatments have the CHC title following their name. That doesn't tell you anything about why you would want that person to give you advice on nutrition, diet, supplementation, or anything else in regards to your headache or migraine treatment, because their specialization, their title, only refers to legal issues in the medical field. So sometimes if you're looking at these titles, FDN, CHC, and there's a lot more, it's always good to research not only what the title means, but who is regulating the use of that title, who gets to accreditate certain institutions to dispense that title. If it's not peer reviewed, if it's not subject to scientific scrutiny, I would be very cautious before I trusted those labels, those titles, as being authoritative for our field of interest, namely headache and migraine. Additionally, you're going to want to watch out for the vilification, number 3 here, vilification of Western medicine. Typically, these homeopathic or natural remedies say your doctors don't know what's going on. Your doctors are just giving you pills without really being concerned about how they affect your overall system. They're getting back to some of the buzzwords. They're unnatural ways to treat it. Some people go so far as to say migraine medication is toxic, and or medications in general are toxic, to use more buzzwords. And so there's a lot of vilification of Western medicine. And while I've done a podcast, I've I've done videos about my problems with the medical community in the West, by and large, as relates at least to headache and migraine treatment and knowledge on their part. So I'm no defender of Western medicine, but the important thing to remember, is that migraines are by everyone who really has studied them long term and done a lot of research, there is at least some genetic component, if not entirely a genetic source for our headache and migraine conditions. And so to vilify Western medication and think that only your diet or only your supplementation or only adjustments in your hormones are going to entirely fix your migraines is crazy. And in fact, it could lead to a really negative problem. Namely, that problem could be that you might think you're just not trying hard enough, either with your diet or whatever else, and that is why you're getting these migraines. And that is a really bad position to be in, because sometimes you can do everything possible or everything that's plausible given your circumstances, and you can still get very intense, very debilitating, and very frequent headache and migraines. And you do not want to be beating yourself up over a genetic condition when it's outside of your control. And that's why medication is important. That's why Western medicine can be helpful, especially with headache and migraine treatments. And so it's something to keep in mind that while Western medicine and doctors don't know a ton about migraines in general, and migraine medication is pretty poor right now, that is no reason to not try Topamax. That's no reason to not keep Imitrex around for those bad days. That's no reason to abandon the notion of Western medicine as being part of the overall pie. Diet, nutrition, supplement, sure, those can be parts of the pie as well, but there's no reason to just dismiss medication. There's no reason to dismiss going to a general practitioner or a neurologist just because the person or persons that you're looking at for your natural migraine treatment are dismissive of it. You do not need to be just because they are. Let's see here. We've also touched on genetics a bit, but there's definitely a dismissal of genetics. Number 4 here is going to be dismissal of genetics. And a lot of these natural remedies and natural protocols for headache and migraine, and of course that's natural with air quotes, the reason that they're dismissive is because they want to emphasize that you can do certain things to help affect some change in your overall migraine problem, your migraine frequency and severity. And that's good. It is helpful to think of yourself not just as a victim of your genetics, but someone who can take some proactive steps and fight back. Change some things in your diet, change your hydration methods, change your sleep patterns, see if you're getting enough of X, Y, and Z by getting blood tests. All of those things are great. I would never, ever dismiss them or think that they're silly. The problem is that genetics do play a huge component when it comes to headache and migraine. If your mom or dad had it, you are much more likely to get them. That is what genetics are. Now, on the other side, you do need to be aware that even if you're genetically disposed to get migraines, you can perhaps reduce some of them and or maybe even get them to almost go away if you do have a very, very strong dietary reason or nutrition reason why your migraines are hitting you. For example, one of the most important things you can do, at least when you start to get chronic migraines or infrequent migraines, even episodic, is to diet track. Diet tracking, information, data is your best friend, and it's going to be your doctor's best friend, and it's something I've advocated for since day one. The thing about tracking is that after you track for at least a couple weeks, hopefully a month, how often you eat, what your hydration levels are, how well you're sleeping, and how well the medications are interacting or how poorly the medications are interacting with your system, you start to see trends if there are any. So you can notice that if you eat thing 1 at such and such time every day for lunch, and then a couple hours later you typically get a migraine pretty regularly, right? Not every time, it's not guaranteed, but let's say that you notice that certain foods seem to always correspond to a migraine a few hours later. Then you could certainly start thinking about cutting out that particular kind of food. Food triggers are a little bit debated right now in the migraine research, but if you notice that something always goes along with a migraine, then cut that thing out. And if your migraines start to dissipate, that is awesome. But that doesn't mean that you can ignore a genetic component to migraines. And you certainly should be wary of anyone who touts that genetics don't matter and everything is in your control. And I know you might be thinking, no one would say that. I have heard in the last 7 days, 3 or 4 migraine remedy proponents saying that genetics don't matter and it's all dietary supplementation, hormone, and sleeping, and that is utterly crazy. So I need to speak against it. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about, and this I guess really isn't a big criticism of the natural method natural remedies for headache and migraine treatment, but it's the price of all of these friggin' ebooks. Everybody out there who has something for you to do migraine nutrition wise or else has an ebook that typically costs $30. It's an ebook, there's no publisher, it costs $30. That's crazy. That's people trying to just make money. Now, I understand people who genuinely believe that what they're doing can help a lot of people want to make that thing self-sustaining. And self-sustaining means bringing in regular and sufficient income to fund the kinds of things that you have in your personal life, pay for rent, pay your bills, and also provide some money for you to begin to expand what you're doing to help more people. I get that, and I definitely get that an ebook can be a great way to do that because it's almost all profit. You pay for Amazon, for example. You give them a small cut of your ebook sales and you get the rest. Awesome. The downside is they're $30 friggin', and I don't know what's in your book, and you want me to trust you enough to purchase it. Now, Amazon does have a return policy on ebooks, but of course, if the ebook is 50 or 60 pages, it might take you past the return policy time to actually see if it was worth your $30. So in general, I'm not a huge fan of these ebooks. Now, I do have an ebook myself. I'm not, immune to this, but of course, I charge $2.99, $2.99 for my ebook. It's a little 20, 30 pager that gives you some introductory information about migraine, introductory information about the kinds of medications your doctor's going to give, and tracking charts that you can print off and fill out so that you can get more information. But I'm not trying to, rip anyone off. I know what it takes to make an ebook since I have one. You type some stuff, you get some good images, you format it right, you upload it. There's no reason it should be $30. I repeat, there's no reason it should be $30. This is a pet peeve. I know I'm cheap, but it shouldn't be $30. But of course, that has very little to do with just the so-called natural approaches to migraine. So that was number 5. That was more of a rant than a genuine criticism. But it's my YouTube channel, my Facebook page. I can put up whatever I want. Number 6 that I'm going to be talking about is my podcast also, sorry. Number 6 that we're going to be talking about is supplements. Supplements are very, very controversial when it comes to headache and migraine treatment, which I'll get to in a reason. But when you check out any number of these quote unquote natural migraine remedies, natural migraine protocols, what they're going to do is tell you that you might need to get some blood work and see if you're actually deficient in some things, which is a good way to go. But some of them are just going to tell you to automatically start slamming certain supplements, magnesium, coenzyme 10, etc., etc. The problem with supplementation, which I've said numerous times in the past, is that at least in the United States, they are almost entirely unregulated. So you could go to the same store, buy 2 different brands of magnesium, and one would have a certain level of magnesium and the other would have a different level, even if they both say 100 milligram or 300 milligram pills. Additionally, you can get lots of other things in the supplements that you are not expecting and that aren't listed on the boxes. The FDA does not regulate supplementation with any sort of seriousness in the United States. And so what you buy can sometimes, and maybe even a lot of the time, be a crapshoot unless you know, 1, a lot about the supplement company, 2, you know that they have certain testing methods to catch bad batches or bad manufacturing practices, that kind of stuff. And 3, you know that if you have an issue with it, they'll be responsive to it. If you don't have all that, buying supplements in the United States can be pretty scary. To emphasize this point, the American Academy of Neurology and the International Headache Society put out somewhat, not annually, sorry, like every 3 to 4 years, a guide to medications, what has the most support for helping with headache and migraine, all the way down to what has the least support. They have different categories for it. They had, a few years ago, a supplement guide. It was brand new. It was a new thing that they were doing. And they listed a bunch that had a lot of supporting them all the way, had a lot of research supporting them all the way down to the ones that had very little or no research supporting them. They ended up pulling in its entirety that supplement guide because one of the best rated, one of the best reviewed supplements, Feverfew, was actually, when purchased from certain areas, getting manufactured with other things inside of the supplement, such that when you took it every day, as you were supposed to with the Feverfew, you would actually get sick over time because it was so detrimental in consistent dosages. And so they ended up pulling their supplement guide. But that's not something that you're going to hear about when it comes to these natural migraine remedies. Now, some people are going to say, I use supplement brand X, or people are going to say, I have my own supplement brand. That's great. I'm glad that some people are standing behind certain brands. But of course, the same questions still apply to those supplements. Namely, how does the manufacturing process go? Where do you source your supplements from? Are they regulated where they come from? How often do you test the quality and content of those supplements so that I, as a consumer, giving you $20 or $30 for a supplement, know that what I'm buying is what the label says? If those answers can't be if those questions can't be answered with confidence and clarity, you really should be skeptical of any sort of migraine protocol that tells you to take a particular supplement without more information. Number 7 is going to be a little bit more lengthy here, and it is about diet. Almost all of the natural migraine cures out there talk about food in some capacity or other. Some have entire diet plans. Others just tell you to avoid certain foods. And there's lots of things to say about diet in relation to migraine. We've already talked on it a little bit in terms of tracking and seeing if there's any correlation between particular foods or particular hydration patterns and your migraines. That is all very good and certainly is not something I'm against. The problem is that certain places that you go market themselves as the migraine elimination diet. If you just cut out these 10 foods today, by the way, you're going to have to know what foods to cut out by buying my $30 ebook, then you can see an entire removal of your migraines, because migraines are going to be a symptom of poor nutrition. They're going to be a symptom of a Western diet that emphasizes all sorts of processed foods, and processed foods are bad. These are the kind of things that natural migraine cures and natural migraine remedies talk about very frequently. And you should not necessarily dismiss these claims, but you should be skeptical unless certain issues can be addressed, certain questions can be answered. Let's see, what else do I want to say about diet? Dietary triggers, right, like we said, are somewhat debated in the literature. Some people think that migraine triggers genuinely exist. Other people think that perhaps your biochemistry is already starting the migraine process and the food you eat doesn't actually impact it that much. Other people think that the food you're craving sometimes actually is what your body wants to help prevent a migraine. There's a lot of debate going on right now that probably won't be settled anytime soon, given that the way to actually do good research on this would be to have large-scale, long-term, and yes, that means very expensive studies. And so they're probably not going to get done on the kind of scale that we need. You're going to see a lot of studies probably in the 40 to 80 range of participants, and went on for 3 months. The kind of normal migraine studies that we see all the time, which are helpful but not definitive. So when it comes to diet, there is, let me make sure I don't forget anything here. That's you're going to see a lot of people talk about particular diets that they think are great. They're called elimination diets. Some people think if you cut out carbs, for example, that is going to really help you because lots and lots of carbs are processed. Grains, for example, bread. You're going to hear about the evil G word, gluten, all the time. The thing to remember about any particular food that a migraine protocol, a migraine natural migraine diet or elimination diet is going to ask the person who's trying to sell it to you, either by contacting them through email or if you have the ability to call them on the phone or something, is to ask them what studies are they using to help support the claim that food X is contributing to my migraines, because you really want to know the basis on which they are touting their particular diet or their particular restriction on your diet and why they think that's the case. And if they can't answer in detail, then there's going to be some skepticism that's justified about their claims. They could be correct, but you don't know that. You only know what they tell you. And so what that means is that you need them to demonstrate their actual mastery of the topic that they're talking about. If they can't do that, then there's no reason for you to subjectively trust them. There's no reason for you to trust them. And so you really should be pestering these people before you purchase and or sign up for their elimination diet and or their migraine protocol, because you want to make sure that what they're doing is both going to help you, is based on at least some research, and is safe. And if you take these 7 tips into account, I think you're at least going to be better than you would have been otherwise. That still might mean you get duped. You still might lose $30 or $60 on an ebook and a diet plan, but at the very least, you should avoid some of the problematic issues associated with a lot of these so-called migraine cures, migraine remedies, those kind of things. All right, so those are my 7 tips, but I definitely want to hear from you. So make sure to hit me up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or at theheadachereview.com in the comment section. Please let me know if you have more tips or tricks, or you think I was being too harsh to anybody or any kind of migraine treatment or protocol. Definitely am not immune from criticism, so please let me know that kind of stuff. As usual, if you need support, if you're feeling alone or isolated because your migraine pain, your chronic pain condition is keeping you from living the life that you want to, and is keeping you from interacting with the kinds of people that you want to, and you're feeling isolated, you can reach out on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, I have a support group. Just search the Migraine Guy support group. You can't just join, you have to request access, and then I or one of our 2 moderators will approve you after you answer some simple migraine related questions. We do that just like this podcast to help filter out some of the noise and some of the people who would try to scam our members. So if you're feeling alone, you really do not have to. Even though you might be isolated physically, the internet gives us the ability to still have human communication, still interact with people, still ask questions, still be inspired, all of those great things. So big shout out to all of our Patreon donors, gained a couple, and I'm very, very thankful for you. If you want to become a patron, you want to help directly support this podcast and all things that the Migraine Guy does to bring migraine awareness to people who need it, people who need community, those kind of things. You can do so at the website Patreon, patreon.com/themigraine guy, and become a patron today.